And hello everyone, this is Pounce here, and today we're in World of Warships, and of course welcome back to the channel. So, in today's video, we're actually going to be looking at what scenarios look like. They've just been released by Wargaming, and today's the first day of the release, at least on the EU servers. Maybe due to some lag, it was already available, time difference, it was available on the Asian servers already by yesterday, but nonetheless. Before experimenting with the Tier 6 independence, just a little reminder that you can participate only in Tier 5 or Tier 6 ships. Um, so before going with the carrier, I actually did experiment with a cruiser and with the battleships, both Tier 6, and it seemed to be a little troubling when you don't have a carrier playing for your team. So let's just take a look, and since I'll be playing carrier, I'll try to highlight, a bit of the basics of carrier gameplay. Albeit we're playing against bots, so it's kind of training. So here you see I'm trying to do a manual drop, and that's you accomplish that by pressing Alt, and then you will have an extra rectangle which you can place as you wish in order to shoot your torpedoes. In that case, I could have gotten a little bit closer. Of course, when you're playing a carrier, you don't want to make the mistake that you drop so close to the ship that your torpedoes don't activate at all. So of course you can get greedy with how close you can release the torpedoes with your planes. With the manual drop, with the automatic drop, you always drop at a safety distance. So whatever you hit, you will hit, but it will be more imprecise. Well, if you're manual dropping, then you can decide just how close you can go. And of course, there's a risk if you get too greedy that you just won't hit the target at all. In that case, I thought I was not greedy enough, so it was relatively easy for the cruisers to avoid them. And this is basically the first wave of ships against which you defend here. It's the easiest one. You have a lot of um, tier 4 cruisers, no battleships, and like really nothing really to worry about. I think this is a very simple phase. And the reason why I'm moving up is because as a carrier, I really want to be um, more or less as close as possible to the action. So still, anyway, you're playing against bots, so there's nothing really to worry too much about. As you can see in the second wave, there's 2 battleships, 2 destroyers, and a carrier. So this is also why I decided to then play carrier, because I did play a game in a battleship with no aircraft power. It was hell, because your cruisers at tier 5 and 6 have really paltry anti-aircraft defense. So it's you really play with the leg down. Now you see what I'm trying to do here with my fighters is I'm actually trying to strafe the enemy. What does strafing mean? It's a similar concept to what you saw with my torpedo bombers before. So if you press the Alt button, you have all of a sudden this rectangle, green rectangle that you can choose where you can shoot. And basically that's gonna place, pass me the term, concentrated fire within that rectangle. But once your aircrafts are committed to that, they cannot deviate from that path just until they finish their strafing run. Of course, enemies caught within the strafing rectangle take a lot of damage, so it's a great way, to get rid of 2 or 3 enemy squadrons. That's entirely possible. It's not limited to the number of squadrons. There could be 4 or 5. You can take down as many as you want, just as far as they're in the rectangle. So I didn't manage to pull any off here. It requires some practice and some aiming, but it is extremely important, especially if you're playing in a configuration of your carrier where you have less fighter squadrons than your opponent, or you're defending against multiple um, enemy planes. So also it is kind of facilitated by the fact that the bot carrier is at tier 5, so really not taking consistent damage, and it's very easy for me to to just clear the skies. And you see that there was a pretty effective manual drop, but the principle is always the same. Maybe with strafing, I would say it's a bit more complicated than doing the dime bomber manual aim, because with strafing, well, I mean, with strafing it's much easier to miss the target, because it's much easier, to dodge and weave if you're the enemy captain commanding, the planes. Okay, saying that the captain commands the planes is actually quite funny. But in any case, as the battle progresses, I think we've managed to clear up most of the enemy forces. Here we can see actually the strafe going on in the top right of the screen, and as you can see, you just make mincemeat of whatever is in your path. Of course, this is also facilitated by the fact that I have um, American, I have an American aircraft carrier, which of course has less numerous numbers of squadrons, but there are more planes per squadron. So Zuiho is really not a concern. If it were for me, I wouldn't shoot anything at it because I've mostly shut down probably all of its planes, and in any case, I can take care of anything because my fighters can't really do anything against enemy ships. And we're seeing the third wave incoming. So basically, my idea here is to try and go scout. And it is true. I'm a bit advanced. My team is actually saying you'd better retreat, and that's fair because cruisers um, will spot me, and at that point they will shoot me, and I will sink. There's really nothing even my teammates could do, even if they wanted to. Like once I'm spotted, I'm looking pretty dead. So you see, in this third wave, there's a few cruisers, a few destroyers. I think my main goal here is to keep um, the destroyer spotted, and when I can, try to torpedo bomb one of the cruisers. So this is interesting here because of course cruisers are much faster than battleships, and usually you don't want to go for the cruisers, especially because they usually have higher aircraft anti-aircraft ratings. But as you see here, the Nuremberg is actually quite fast, so I try to plot my run, and once my bombers have passed that circle, that you could see before, I can't turn back. So you see here, it's a quick dodge for him for the second last torpedo, and I managed just to hit one. But the mistake is done, and at that point I can only, hide, recharge, rinse, and repeat. And of course, what then I try to do with my fighters is going to keep the destroyer spotted, and this works particularly well against bots, but I would say even better against players, because at least in this scenario you have a lot of structures, you have a lot of allies compacted in an area, and they're all coming towards you. But in anything that is not a bot scenario, keeping the destroyer spotted with your planes is actually extremely annoying for the destroyer, and it is extremely helpful for your team because actually spotting, I think, is a very underlooked mechanic within this game, and I think a lot of players don't really understand the value of spotting. So really, it's really really important, especially against destroyers. They don't really have anti-aircraft at all. Okay, at higher tiers, yes, it could also be damaging to you, but usually if the destroyer is trying to stay concealed, he'll have his anti-aircraft turned off, and it's just easy at that point. If your team can see the destroyer, then hitting it is not particularly difficult. It's when it's invisible that it tends to be problematic. So here the third wave is taking a bit longer to deal with, and that's also because the battleships are very slow at this tier, and repositioning them is, of course, not the most fastest and expedient thing to do. So here I take I consider going on the Miyoko, but everything and everyone is already firing on it, so there's no point in wasting my entire salvo. So I decide it's time to go take number two on the Nuremberg. So this time I try to be more precise. I try to lead better, and it looks very much as if this Nuremberg doesn't really have too much of a chance, but manages to escape on the third torpedo that would have otherwise sunk it. And this is also one of the reasons why you don't really drop on cruisers unless absolutely necessary, because they are quick and they are versatile. It's very easy for them to weave around torpedoes. They have the mobility, they have the speed to avoid you. And in any case, they usually tend to have relatively small health pools compared to battleships. So if you're a carrier, of course, your dive bombers, you can send them on pretty much whatever you want. Even though against cruisers, it's pretty much suicide. But your torpedo bomber should always, always, always go against battleships. Ideally, the order would be first dive bombers to set flames on the ship. They pop the repair, and then you go with the torpedo bombers. So then, if they flood, you can manage to do that. They can basically not repair. So at this point, we have, if I'm not wrong, this is the I don't know if this is the final round or not. In any case, there is an allied aircraft carrier which in E10 on the map, So of course it's a Lexington, it's a highly valuable target. So my idea is we've got to save it. So of course I start diverting my planes immediately. I can see it's 2 cruisers, so of course that's not an ideal situation. I'd always want to go for the battleships, but keeping the Lexington alive seems to me the top priority within this mission. If you're trying to play it for stars and just for succeeding, if you can make the Lexington survive, that's going to give you a huge boost, as you can see in the rest of the video. Now, for dive bombers, a little parenthesis, you can technically, without technically, you can manual aim them, but that takes a lot of skill, and it's been a long time since I've done it, and if you're hitting cruisers, not worth it. Probably not worth it. It's okay on destroyers and on battleships. So my idea here is to go on the Hipper. I think the rest of my team can hit the Mogami. And you know, with this spread, I think I've been very generous with this Hipper, far too much. I should have been much, much closer. And as you can see, the Hipper will have, like, even though I hit 2 torpedoes, I could have actually sunk that one in one salvo. I was very generous with giving him lead. Also considering that he was pinned against the island, so you can really avoid them. So that was a bit of a mistake on my part. So you can definitely, uh, you know, um, learn from my mistakes. And the Lexington is like limping away. It's that's what manual aim. That's what like automatic aim looks like with this squadron here of the Lexington. So you see the Hipper is nearly dead, and we just can't seem to finish it off. And same appears for our own Lexington, which is barely surviving, and at this time I'm really having very, very, very strong doubts if we can actually pull this off. Because as you can see, Carrier Romeo in Lexington only has 900 HP, and I'm afraid the Hipper is going to shoot another salvo. But in any case, it seems that Lexington actually manages to make it into port. Port being quite generic, this is a stationary base. Our Fuso is taking a pounding, and I don't remember if the Fuso actually survives. If he does, it's quite miraculous. With the dive bombers, I try to go on the destroyers. You can see I sent my fighters to go and cover the other destroyer, and at that point, I absolutely need to hit the Niceno. But you see, I'm coming from the wrong side of the island. What could have happened here is that I could have gotten greedy. I could have hit him from the right side of the island to the left, but then I would not have enough space to drop, which is what I tried to explain in the beginning of the video. And here I think I made a pretty gross mistake. I thought that maybe I could hit both the destroyer and the battleship, but then again, Niceno is a quite fast battleship, so my idea actually fails miserably. And out of the potential damage that I could have done, easily 20 to 25,000 damage with the torpedo bombers and flooding, I end up only hitting one. So, and there was also the potential problem that if the destroyer died right in front of the battleship, its carcass would have still saved the battleship from most of the torpedoes. So I really I didn't think that out too well. At this point, you know, the battle is becoming a bit hectic. I've seen that we've lost the Fuso. I see the Lexington is super low. I see that I'm very close to the enemies, and this is actually worrying me a lot. And then I also spot the Azuma, and I'm like, what the hell? How is a tier 9 making it into this scenario? But apparently there pops out an Izumo at some point. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, I mean, if I'm not torpedo bombing it, who the hell's gonna deal with it? Because we don't have destroyers. Like, this team has never had any destroyers, so like, I'm basically the mono counter to it. Well, of course, you'll have fires from the cruisers, but on their own, it's just not sufficient. So at this point, I'm thinking, well, I'm mostly praying, you know, that the Izumo anti-aircraft isn't focusing on me or is not too good in general. And of course, as you go up in tiers, it becomes relatively easier to hit targets. And here I make a slight mistake, even though I do end up hitting 3 of my torpedoes out of 5. It should have been 6, but 1, of course, gets killed. In the process is that the zoom would actually slowed down, and I should have taken note of this. I just, you know, this is when you do manual drops, always try to consider, you know, how fast is my target moving. And you'll always end up in this dilemma, because especially at higher tiers, the anti-air of battleships is going to rip you apart. So you don't really have, so much time for pondering. And here, by the way, the Königsberg sends great torpedoes into the Izumo, finally sealing the deal. But this is the great dilemma when you're manual dropping. Like, you need a little bit of experience, and you need to, evaluate your situation. But at the same time, you don't have forever. Like, you have only a very, very, very um, brief and limited, window of opportunity. So it takes practice, and I understand at the beginning it can be very frustrating. I know that at lower tiers now you can't actually manual aim, from what I've understood. Like, you have to use auto aim, and I'm not exactly sure what Wargaming was thinking. Maybe it's to encourage people to play carrier. That's fine and dandy, but then that just makes it even tougher when all of a sudden you exit, this tier 4, tier 5, barrier in which everything is simple, and all of a sudden at tier 6 it's hell. So I appreciate the idea of wargaming, but not so much the execution. So still, I think strafing and manual aiming is something that a lot of people find problematic. I can understand that because it takes practice and it can be very frustrating. While it's much easier to to learn just another class which is not carrier. Also considering how different the playstyle of carrier is. So as we see here, or there's just the Scharnhorst at this point. Scharnhorst is a quick ship. At this point, I can just readjust just within that, that white circle. I see the Scharnhorst is slowing down, but at this point, the momentum will just pull her forward just into my torpedoes. And at that point, there's really very little that the captain can do. I'll bite its butt. And here comes the brave Tenryu, the tier, I don't remember if it's a tier 3 or tier 2, but whatever, the last brave Tenryu just coming to potentially save the game. And just look how many shells are flying towards that poor Tenryu. I mean, I found this quite hilarious. Everything for me was on cooldown, just waiting for my planes to recharge. But at this point, on this poor lowly Tenryu, this is pretty much where we're gonna seal the deal. And I mean, it took some effort. Despite not having a destroyer, we did manage, to win it. Now, if I'm not wrong, there should be going to be like victory screen and the evaluation of how well we did. And it was a how many stars, because you can actually gain stars depending on the objectives you made. So we did make 3 stars. Unfortunately, the Lexington died, and that cost us a star. And well, we did not all survive. I think that's going to be extremely tough. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have in some way encouraged you to play some more carrier, and just try out the scenario. Don't be afraid. And, just enjoy it. And if you liked my explanations, by all means, subscribe. And Pounce Springs is just here on the channel waiting for you guys. Until the next time.